Have you ever purchased a game, played it for like 90 minutes and then gave it back because it wasn't for you? But a month later bought it again because you were super excited to play it? Well, something like that happened with me and Diablo IV. Let me explain how and what. Diablo is a brain-dead game from lazy developers who can't even bother to make their game in a normal third-person perspective. I prefer to play sophisticated games like Call of Duty and FIFA. Well, I might not have said it like that, but I was honestly baffled when people I respect and people I know who like smart and well-made games were hyped for Diablo 4 and shared their memories and love for Diablo 1, 2, and even 3. I couldn't understand why people liked Diablo and Diablo-style games. I was even more dumbstruck when I looked up the numbers of how record-breaking are the sales of these games. And when Diablo 4 came out, because people were so hyped about it and game reviewers I liked gave it good marks, I decided to buy Diablo 4. Played it for 90 minutes and, like I said, gave it back. It just was not for me. But days went by and I still saw the hype. I saw some articles and people were seriously saying that this is a game that could be nominated for Game of the Year. That is to say, it would stand alongside the new Zelda game, Starfield, probably, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Spider-Man 2, Jedi Survivor, Final Fantasy XVI, Street Fighter 6, Baldur's Gate 3, and Gollum. This year is so stacked and people are saying Diablo 4 belongs there. A game I refunded. It's not to say that I am the final authority, the opposite. I pride myself of understanding why even the games I don't like are good and giving them a fair shake, but this one just did not make sense to me. So, I decided to go back to the source, go back in time and space to understand what makes Diablo so good. I reasoned that if I want to understand it, I need to experience it all. So I played every Diablo game, watched lore videos, and even checked out some of the comic books and art books.
In this video, Ray will mostly talk about the games, their history, and his own experience with them. He will not talk too deeply about game systems, and these are not to be considered reviews of Diablo games. This is his journey in learning why people like Diablo and what makes a classic action role-playing game tick. Please enjoy.
So, in the early 90s, a man called David Brevik had a dream about making video games. He liked roguelike games and turn-based strategies. In other words, he was a nerd. The original concept was something I came up in the high school, said Brevik in a GDC talk in 2016.
Hi everybody. Wow. There's a lot of people here.
After college, he worked at a digital clip art company, but when that went under, a few survivors went on to launch their own company. Thus, the Condor, the game company, was born. So he, inspired by the pick-up-and-play nature of NHL 94, that, by the way, is a true story, decided to make Diablo. Well, it was not that simple and there were many inspirations, but basically he wanted something opposed to strategy and RPG games with character creation sheets and wall of text. And he had named the game idea Diablo, based on Mount Diablo, which was where Brevik lived at the time when he conceived the game idea. Meanwhile, in 1994, Blizzard published some random game whose name no one has ever heard about to this day, Warcraft. But the key here is that Brevik had some relationship with Blizzard before they were named Blizzard. Both teams worked on each of their own Justice League game. At that time, often games from one IP were made by totally different teams for different gaming systems. That was not unusual. So, when no other publishers wanted to take on Brevik's RPG idea, Blizzard agreed with two rules. It's not turn-based, as Brevik originally wanted, and it has to have multiplayer. Legends, and Brevik himself actually, says that at first he was not happy about it.
It was kind of a complicated turn-based game. So eventually Blizzard South approached us and said, well, we would really like to make this a real-time game. And I said, what are you guys talking about? No, this is one of your strategy games.
Here we can see the original 1994 design document for Diablo, where it was envisioned as a turn-based RPG, next iteration of original Rogue. But he was outvoted by his own team. So he sat there at his workstation thinking what to do. He assumed it will be hard to make an action RPG, but he played with some numbers and Diablo was born. Well, it was not that simple, but he really did on Monday present his team with a demo where his little warrior guy with one click from Brevik bashed a skeleton's head in real time, and thus Diablo was born. Two interesting facts from Brevik's 2016 GDC talk was that at one point they wanted the game to look like claymation, like the fighting game Primal Rage. And they modeled their game grid system on original XCOM games.
It had a little cursored box that showed exactly the tile size and etc. And we wanted to emulate this look. And so we just took that and we put it right into Diablo.
I just think these two facts are interesting. So, despite everything, at the end of 1996 and at the beginning of 1997, around after 3 years of work, the game came out.
Diablo, enter if you dare.
So, naturally, this was my first stop. While, as stated, I did not like Diablo, I was kinda excited to play this, because it's one of the greats, one of the modern gaming stepping stones. And I love diving into the history of games, so I cleared my mind of my biases and preconceived notions and launched the game. While, like I said, I am not a fan of Diablo and ARPGs in general, I have played Titan Quest long time ago and Path of Exile for maybe 10-20 hours together, so I feel like I at least understand the basic cornerstones of an ARPG. But Diablo 1 surprised me. It's a very different game than one familiar with modern ARPGs might assume. Yes, this was the birth of ARPG, but it still is a bit different from what we are playing today. You see, while it's a real-time action, it still feels slightly more turn-based, like everything is happening in an orderly fashion, and often it feels like a survival game. The resources are scarce, the item drops are way more infrequent than in future games and other ARPGs. And I constantly felt like I am on the verge of overextending and dying. As soon as the game starts, we get thrown into the little town called Tristram. Ancient evil is unlocked in a nearby chapel, and after some short talk with the local peasants, we may skip by the way all of that, we head into the church to face our first enemies. Our goal is to rid the town of evil. A thing I noticed that will go through all of the Diablos: we are not a complex character. Our main guy or gal is a classic hero. There is no doubt, no dialogue choices that would convey our little person is doubtful or unsure. No, we are a hero, and we kill monsters because that's what heroes do. No complex emotions or grey morals. We good, Diablo and demons bad.
Much has changed since you lived here, my friend. All was peaceful until the Dark Riders came and destroyed our village.
And that will largely continue, as that connects with the Brevik's wish for simplifying the traditional and cumbersome RPG, but of course also works well together with the classic fantasy tropes. That simplification, of course, as mentioned, translates also into the gameplay as well. You just go in, see an enemy, kill it, then kill another one, then another one, and you get a level up, maybe if you are lucky, a new gear item, and you continue killing enemies and advancing into the dungeon. That's the gameplay loop. It's even described like that in the original, still turn-based Diablo doc, where they say the fun starts when you enter the dungeon.
The fun really begins when the player guides his character down the road and enters the abandoned temple, the first level of the dungeon. At this point, the computer generates the layout of the first level.
You can see from the documentation how the simplification of many cumbersome issues was at the heart of Brevik's idea. But this game does not hold your hand. The explanations and descriptions of what things do are far and few. Most of it you find through experimentation. You can and will easily run into the Butcher, one of the legendary staples of Diablo, who will kill you in an instant. I actually don't know how people kill him honorably. I cheesed him. And on the hand-holdy thing, I must admit, I did not know how the town teleport scrolls worked. I assumed it works only one way, and that is why for the first 3 to 4 hours every time when there was a need to return to town, I walked all the way back through all the levels and all the dungeons, and then, after finishing my business in the town, I walked back all through all levels, all dungeons. Yeah. But now I know, and I don't hold that against the game, as I don't mind experimenting and finding out things on my own. Actually, playing through Diablo games, I constantly encountered this nice feeling of discovery, as I was quite ignorant to the Diablo and its ways, and it was nice. Plus, my not knowing how to use town portals really allows for the level design to shine here, as I was never far from the town and the exits of each of the dungeons, so the jog back was not very annoying, but like I said, it highlights how well designed the dungeon is. Another thing that reminds us this is an old PC game is that you can almost soft-lock yourself. If you are playing a sorcerer, your mana does not regenerate itself, so while I was constantly trying to save up some money to buy gear, I kept spending every dime and selling everything I could just to keep my potion drinking habit satisfied. This was one of the other things I discovered also some hours in. Sorcerer comes with the ability to recharge the staff, so technically I guess soft locking is impossible, but a player definitely can get into some tight spots. And as for the RPG elements, they are relatively limited. We have only 4 stats: Vitality, Strength, Dex and Energy. So 1 stat for each of the 3 classes and Vitality for all. This is all we increase doing our level ups. The spells and abilities as in the original Rogue we pick up at random, just like Brevik wanted, the simplification of cumbersome RPGs from tabletops to PC games. This was the least interesting part for me, as building your character, reading about abilities and choosing the ones you want is one of the things I, as a gamer, do enjoy a lot. I totally could respect what Diablo 1 was going for, but as the later games show, I was not alone in wishing a bit more of a deliberate personalization for my character, a bit more RPG in my ARPG. How was my excitement meter at this point? Well, I did enjoy the survival, slow dungeon crawling experience Diablo 1 offered to me. Besides the gameplay, I was really enjoying the mood of the game. The town music perfectly conveys the dark and oppressive atmosphere the game is going for. The monster design is nothing special, and the environments are relatively samey looking, but both of these things can easily be justified by the limited possibilities for games at that time. And overall, everything worked together really well. There is something really interesting with old RPG games and old graphics that just work together to create this depressive and a bit sad mood. And that really works well for Diablo. While playing this game neither in mechanical nor visual sense, I did feel like I am playing a super old game that needs to be forgiven because it's old or first of its kind, like we do with some other classics when we are replaying them now in 2023. With Diablo, it's not like that. All of the aspects feel great, and with some light tweaks to user interface and upscaling the models, it could be presented as a new retro-inspired game. I actually would like someone to do that. Take the original Diablo, the slow survival style dungeon exploring, and transpose it to a game with a bit more modern sensibilities. I think there could be something really special. Game developers, hit me up. But yeah, while I like Diablo 1 and I honestly am interested in replaying this game more, I must journey on, as this definitely does not explain why Diablo games sell so well and why so many people love them so much. As this Diablo is very good, but it's a niche game made by nerds for nerds like me. So, moving on. So basically, my first serious experience with Diablo was good. I was honestly interested in moving forward, as this is the ARPG. The ARPG. Diablo 2 is one of the games that stands shoulder to shoulder with Half-Life, Mario, Doom, Legend of Zelda, Resident Evil 4, and other games that have invented or completely changed gaming. This game is often mentioned on the lists of best games, best PC games, best RPGs, and also one of the best Easter eggs, as this is the game where they included the famous cow level. All because fans of Diablo 1 rumored that there is such a level in the first game. That, I think, is a wonderful story that reflects on why this team and, well, old Blizzard in general, before the dark times, were such beloved developers. They were not afraid to be goofy and like the people who played their games. So, after finishing the first game, as Brevik and others from the team admit, they were burned out. The final work on Diablo was brutal and they wanted to take a break and brainstorm what to do next. But they felt that they are not done with Diablo.
It didn't take us too long to get to a point of wanting to make Diablo 2, I think, as I recall, and this is a long time ago now. I was sort of always pro Diablo 2. Even at the end of Diablo 1, I had a big wish list that sort of turned into the Diablo 2 design document of what we would do from there. So I figure it was more of a relief that everyone else got on board from my point of view.
Interestingly, the expansion for Diablo, the first one, was made by another company called Synergistic Software, and at one point the original crew had to call them up and say, yo, don't put that in the expansion, we are doing this for Diablo 2. And after 3 years of work, at first they planned to do it in 2, they published the game to a massive success.
At first I didn't know what to think. Maybe they just celebrated Halloween early in this town. Maybe every day. I began looking for answers. But soon I couldn't get the images I'd seen out of my head. And it was clear that their world was becoming mine.
Bad dream, hun?
Diablo 2. Play it now on PC and Macintosh. Rated M for mature.
They sold 2 million copies after a month and a half. It was awarded a spot in the Guinness World Book of Records for 2000 edition for being the fastest selling computer game ever, with more than 1 million units sold in the first 2 weeks of availability. And I see why. It wonderfully balances the nostalgia with the sound cues and the familiar gameplay with new and expanded features. Like this time we are not restricted to one cathedral that goes deeper and deeper. No, we are in an open world, quotation marks, where we are sort of free to explore and find dungeons, monsters and loot. And even though I like the compact elegance of the first one, I can see how opening the game map allowed for devs to play with more ideas. As well, I can see how cool it must have felt for a gamer in 2000 to have this freedom of exploration that in that time was not as common as it is now in our open world action adventure crafting survival games. Even now, playing this in 2023, I felt that. When I came up to the cathedral in Act 1, I felt that mystery tingle I used to get in the old games, when I did not know what to expect from games. And also the various biomes of each of the acts actually helped the world of Sanctuary to feel larger. Oh yeah, and I must mention that for this I played the original as well as the 2021 remaster. I will touch on that a bit later. As for the gameplay, here I could now see how this game has inspired many other games, starting from ARPGs to even games like Hades. In Diablo 2 we move away from the survival aspect of the game and it becomes faster. Our spells feel more powerful and they have sanded down the gameplay loop, while adding a bit more complexity to the character building. Here we don't scrounge for resources, here we are shifting through stuff to find the best items. Here we don't need to desperately scrounge gold to buy potions. In Act 1 I never felt the need to buy potions, as they dropped in a healthy rate and actually I had to store my potions in the storage box. And of course in this game the mana regenerates, as opposed to Diablo 1 where if you play a caster build you were at the mercy of potion drops. One of the biggest changes that definitely helps to nail down this tightening of the gameplay loop is the fact that we don't need to find spells and skills. We choose them from the skill tree. In the original we had 3 characters with only few differences, but here we have 7 with expansion characters that differ in what weapons they can use, what spells and skills they have access to. So that is a lot of replayability and a lot of customization. And then there are the rune words and synergies between different skills that totally change how your character plays from one game to another. And at this point Diablo series also cements what it is. It's a power fantasy. You are very powerful. Yes, of course, you can die and be overwhelmed by enemies, but as opposed to the first one, I was never really afraid of the enemies. No, in this game and in the following games, I am the danger.
I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger.
As for the story, it picks up not long after the hero of the first game defeated Diablo and locked up its essence in his own body. Of course, that did not last, and we take up the mantle of one of the 5+2 playable heroes to find the ancient tools and stop the protagonist of the previous story that is now wandering the world as a vessel for Diablo. I must say that this is such a cool and thoughtful story concept, a hero that is corrupted. It fits so well with the setting and the mood and the music. Yeah, I just really like the setting and the story and the overall vibe of the Diablo 2 world. So, how is my excitement meter? Like I said, I started to get the allure of ARPG, the power fantasy. You start strong and you get stronger and deadlier, and what keeps you there is the promise of more power and better loot. And the dark and oppressive atmosphere is there as well. The open world makes it feel bigger and you can experience the desolation and the world ravaged by evils. As for the remaster, it's mostly the same with some quality of life improvement and better visuals. And I liked it. I know that some fans of the original were not that crazy about it, as some said they did not add enough quality of life improvements. Like, for example, people did not like that the potions still take up space in the inventory, and I get why. The amount of potions you need to carry with you and hoard and micromanage to make them accessible in fights is a bit annoying. But that did not deter me from enjoying this game thoroughly. I loved the controller support for the new version. This game has no right to perform and be as easy to control with controller as it is. Before we move on, there is one final interesting tidbit from Brevik's talk at DevCon about Diablo 2 and how they considered going third-person camera hovering somewhere behind the character, but decided against it.
Many people were going 3D, so we had this big decision to make. Would we go 3D or not? We thought that ultimately the game will just look better if we use sprite. We can make it look much better and high-res if we don't go with real-time polygons, but instead make kinda high-res sprites and give them more fluid motion and higher detail.
So yeah, this was my experience with Diablo 2. I enjoyed it, and I'm not gonna lie, I kept playing Diablo 2 throughout making of this video in parallel to other games. This is truly a well-made game. There is something really special about Diablo 2. So, thanks to my first two good experiences, I was really excited for the next games in line. At this point I read also the comic book with 3 short stories that came out in 2001. It's serviceable. Maybe for the lore masters there are interesting stuff, but for me it was The art was nothing too interesting or beautiful, and the stories were okay. So nothing bad, but nothing really great to talk about. Maybe this one page though, where we get some Animorph level of uncomfortable looking transformation.
And I know you've been wondering if we have any big news for you at this event. Well, turns out, we do.
So, my journey must continue. My interest has been piqued. I am starting to get the power fantasy gameplay and I'm falling in love with the dark setting. Hope nothing ruins it. So we enter a new phase of Blizzard's and Diablo's journey. And here we are now in 2012. Diablo 3, that we know of today as Diablo 3, is being made by a team that is not the original team. And we are in the world of MMOs, microtransactions, and always online systems.
It is in their nature.
Some of the original team, by the way, including Brevik, actually started to work on Diablo 3 years earlier, but due to creative differences they left Blizzard. This is also the time when Blizzard's downfall starts. It is not as disliked with as bad as reputation as it has today, but the corruption has set in.
This entire city must be purged.
So we get Diablo 3 with an auction house where you can spend real money. Isn't that exciting? But I guess that's besides the point of this video, as over the years the game, from what I read online, became better. They removed the real money auction house, added some good DLCs, and some of the people did like it. For many it was the first Diablo as it came to consoles, and this very mouse-clicky centric game performed well with the controllers. People on consoles liked it. People liked it a lot, as Diablo 3 remains one of the best-selling PC video games of all time, with 30 million copies sold worldwide, and also one of the best-selling PC video games of all time, with 30 million copies sold. But not everyone was happy about the game. First of all, the game took forever to come out, as detailed in a video documentary on a YouTube channel called Indigo Gaming. The development of it was hell. All of the game's systems were developed and changed many times. A lot of fans were disappointed with the results. In a 2012 interview with Ink Gamer's Brevik, the original Diablo creator, while talking about his ARPG Marvel game, was very diplomatic, but still noted that not everything turned out the way he would have done it. Besides the changes to the character leveling system and skill system that changed, like I said, a lot of times through the development, people also did not enjoy the always online aspect. As in that era of gaming, many did not have fast and reliable internet. As well, the fact that Diablo always offered an offline experience. And of course, Blizzard being Blizzard, most of the millions that got the game on day one could not play it, as the servers could not handle the load. Of course. Skipping into the future with Diablo IV, they did it again, but of course at this time almost no one cared enough to make a fuss about it, even though there is still the issue with people on the first days waiting in the long queues and getting disconnected. But back to Diablo 3. Other people criticize the story. In this one we are 20 years after the events of Diablo 2 and we play once again as a hero with zero questions about our role in the world.
Come, let us search for your uncle. We'll need to open.
There is evil and we must purge it. A mysterious star falls from the sky and strikes the Tristram Cathedral where Deckard Cain and his niece Leah are investigating an ominous prophecy. The player character known as Nephilim arrives at the New Tristram to investigate the fallen star. They rescued Cain and discovered that the fallen object is actually a person. The Nephilim learns that the person is the Dark Wanderer who was possessed by Diablo in Diablo 2. The Dark Wanderer is Leia's father, and she is the perfect vessel for Diablo's physical form.
I will now stand as wisdom. On behalf of those who risked all to save us. Forevermore, we shall stand together.
So what about me? Well, my first impression was it's more colorful. And it truly was a very steep change jumping from Diablo 2 to this. It lost its gothic oppressiveness and turned into a dark but still high fantasy. I guess they try to make it more interesting and inviting to World of Warcraft players. As of course, at that time World of Warcraft was still highly popular and raking in big bucks with Mists of Pandaria. This is somewhat confirmed by one of the game's visual directors, Christian Lichtner, in an interview in 2012. Responding to interviewers' question about the fan backlash about the visual style, he said,
We also wanted to make sure that we kept it open to a wider audience. We didn't want to create an art style that would exclude people. Sometimes when you make something that's very gory, even borderline vile, that could happen.
So yeah, they, motivated by the huge success of World of Warcraft, wanted to replicate the broad appeal. And I get that. But at the same time, I get why in a game like Diablo, visuals and mood is a very core concept. But graphically, of course, it looked significantly better than original 2 games. It's more cinematic and in some ways more engaging, like you interact with the world more, so it feels more alive. But one thing where it fell off, really, is the RPG elements. The class and spell system in this one, even for me, a person who is not a veteran post-game min-maxer, feels very simplified. You level up, you unlock new spells, and then can level up or get preset modifiers. So basically you can choose which of the handful of predefined spells or skills to use, but it feels more restrictive. I understand that some more customization and min-maxing comes with getting the best gear in the post-game stuff, but yeah, I won't do post-game stuff. It's not my thing. And in the documentary I already mentioned, it is very well documented how throughout the years the system changed, and I definitely am not the only one who perceived this to be simplified and less gratifying. I honestly wish they would have worked a bit more on the RPG aspect. I understand Blizzard probably decided that what people want is the power trip and loot grinding, not Excel sheets and million different ways to combine powers.
Some games go for complexity, and that is what they want. I don't think there is anything wrong with that, if that is your choice. But I tend to prefer having a simpler system that shoots for depth. You can get depth through complexity, but I feel like that is the easiest way to get it. Easiest way to maintain approachability is to keep your controls simple.
And I get it. One could say simplification is at the core heart of Diablo. But I don't know. It feels not right. I kinda think that for me, one of the most interesting aspects would be trying to build my own specific character, choosing what spells to take, what to neglect, and maybe even building my own spells and hybrid classes. Side note, I played Path of Exile as well, and they are close to what I would want from a game like this in terms of RPG, but not exactly. While Path of Exile offers huge skill tree that theoretically you can expand in any shape or form, and you can modify your spells and gears with the gems, it still feels a bit restricted by the predefined classes. I guess my ideal ARPG would be Divinity Original Sin RPG system, just with Diablo combat and power trip of killing hundreds of mobs in a second. Back to the main topic. After researching this, I found an interesting thing that one Reddit user wrote, that basically why people feel that Diablo 1 and 2 offered more customization and freedom, it's actually an illusion of choice. As if you want to be strong magic caster and defeat game's challenges, you will spec correctly and choose the best spells. So basically it is an illusion of choice that the Diablo 3 removed in the favor of making the game more streamlined. Actually, my friend said something similar about Diablo vs Path of Exile. He said that Diablo pretends that there are various good builds, but actually you get funneled into dev preconceived builds. Then again, this takes away my ability to make mistakes, and that is also part of the game. Making mistakes is part of the game. Making a trash tier build and then respecing when you are more familiar with the game adds another layer to the game. It is fun, it is good, it is interesting to learn and to expand your horizons and understand how to actually build a good character. So, yeah, I would not say that Diablo 3 disappointed me, but from the 3.5 Diablo games I played, I found this to be least interesting for me mechanically. And if I would have played only this, I don't think I would have got to the place where I am now with appreciation of Diablo games. But I did like how the spells and abilities felt more powerful and more impactful right from the beginning. And I also like the improved speed. The game in general moves faster, and that is also pretty cool. One thing I do not like and I don't understand why this game did not have a controller support for PC, since it had one for consoles. That is baffling. So this did not really move my excitement meter. And reading and watching about all of the strange decisions they made trying to create the next World of Warcraft and seeing all the broken promises, I actually started to feel a bit bummed out. And this was the Diablo game I spent the less time with. But like I said, meanwhile I was playing Diablo 2 and my meter rose because I got more comfortable with these games and the idea about how you play them. And also, you know how you get into watching long TV series or a book series, and maybe there are some weaker parts like one bad episode or half of a book is not that great, but you are now just into the world and you appreciate even the weaker ones, even the bad episodes, right? Because you are falling in love with the general concept and falling in love with the world. That's me with Diablo 3. I looked at some Diablo art as well, as I really love concept art for games. I like seeing what artists envisioned and comparing how it turned out into the game. There is not much to add from this except maybe one funny thing I found in the Diablo 3 art book. So basically they talk about making playable characters and they describe the idea behind each of them. And Diablo 3 was the first one where you could change the gender of the character. So they made female and male body type for each of the playable characters. So with making of Barbarian they write that they did not want to make the female character super sexy. They focused on her being a warrior. And this is the art for the Barbarian female. Let me repeat. Blizzard authors say that this is not super sexy. They say that this basically is a grounded view of female barbarian. Yeah. Well, at least with the Demon Hunters they admitted they wanted sexy. 2012 was a wild time.
I was curious, I see a lot of mechanics that we've kind of been begging for in Diablo 3 in this. Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this strictly mobile forever?
Are there any, the current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
You can play on your tablet too.
Just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
These days, you do have phones. Unfortunately, mobile gaming mostly sucks, so that's sad. So they released Diablo Immortal in 2022, and turns out people really did have phones. In the first month of release, game racked up nearly 50 million in reported revenue across 10 million downloads. Even if debates and criticisms swirled around the free-to-play RPG, data shows that the game has made at least 1 million a day since launch. People have freaking phones. So yeah, but the story of Diablo Immortal is set 5 years after Diablo 2, and we are playing a hero that is trying to gather powerful, world-changing world stones. So I played this as well, and actually I see Blizzard's point, sort of. It kinda makes sense to make a Diablo phone game. It works, it plays really well. I was geared towards being disappointed and annoyed, but just like with the controller support for Diablo Resurrected, actually the game works pretty well with the touchscreen. The limited amount of buttons you need, the top-down view, the gameplay that does not require a large screen and so on and so forth, works with the mobile. Even though the original creators could not have imagined our Steve Jobs-infected world, they accidentally made a pretty perfect mobile game. Even the style of encounters, fast, short fights, perfectly lend to the mobile-style gaming in short, satisfying bursts. Voiced characters and really good graphics also was a plus. But of course, if I was disappointed with Diablo 3 RPG side, then there is even more of a glaring issue here. The only decision you make here is which of the spells to slot in your available slot. And that's almost it. Well, yes, again, there is loot and sockets to fill with gems and stuff and events and raids and clans, but that all comes later. And I don't like the social aspect and post-game stuff, like I said, I really don't do. But actually, if we are talking about a mobile gacha game, then of course there is no post-game stuff, there is just game. And of course we all remember how much money streamers spent to get the best stuff, so yeah, unfortunately the game is greedy as hell. But the controls and the general feel of Diablo on the phone is great. And the first, 5 to 10 hours of the game were pretty good. Playing this made me sad, thinking about a world where we could have had good mobile games. In alternative reality, mobile games could have actually been good and fun. If only. So did this excite me more for Diablo? No, not directly, but actually I must admit that playing all 4 of these, reading comic, watching YouTube lore videos, going through the art and design documents made me feel hype for the Big Daddy. Or should I say Big Mommy? And here we are, the final boss, the Big Mommy, one of the nominees for Greatest Game of the Year, I'm pretty sure, Diablo IV. So, game came out this year to very positive reviews.
Ray is well aware that the first season of Diablo made a lot of gamers mad. But as mentioned, he is trying to understand why people were hyped about the game and why they were so positive about it when it came out. The general sentiment of people who were looking for long-time enjoyment from the game has changed drastically, but Ray thinks that the core of what made the campaign interesting and enjoyable for people in the first month still remains.
So yeah, Diablo IV, good graphics, good story, amazing cutscenes, and the gameplay people have loved for more than 25 years. Kinda, but we will get to that in a minute. It's made by Blizzard and probably is the best thing they have done in years. People are happy that it's darker, people like a bit more complex character build system, wonderful graphics and detailed world. One of the highlights is interesting main villain. But, of course, not everything is perfect. Of course, not all people are happy campers, and there are complaints as well. If you read Reddit, there are a bunch of complaints, especially after Season 1 landed recently. And that is kinda fair. If you make your game always online with promises to support it for a long time, then well, people will have million things to praise, and even more things to complain about. So in this one we fight against Lilith, one of the 2 creators of the world of Sanctuary. She is a demon lady who is seeking independence from both heaven and hell. We play as another hero 50 years later after Diablo 3. So my personal excitement meter is quite high. Like I said at the start, I played Diablo 4 and then gave it back as it was just not for me. But I'm not even joking. Playing the old games and waiting for my salary so I could buy the game again, I was getting kinda hyped. Yes, I was hyped for a game I refunded once. I was actually excitedly waiting for this to download. Not only because my Diablo knowledge had grown, but also because I understood the gameplay more. I appreciated it more. So I fired up the game again, and yes, from the first moment I could now appreciate everything slightly more. The gameplay, the style, the atmosphere, as this is more in the line with the original games. It's dark and moody, it's gothic, and a bit more horror than Diablo 3. I was playing this and I was thinking, damn you guys, I think I like it. Together with the cutscenes and the moody, rugged, cold environment of the Act 1, the game does really draw you in. I can feel the wind, the cold, the desperation, and I really like the little details like enemies ambushing you from the snow or crawling out of the water. It's crafted with some love, it feels like. And Lilith is a great villain, because you sit there and be like, hey, she does actually have some good points. And that is what makes a good villain. That is not just a big, dumb chaos monster. Don't get me wrong, there is also a place for big, dumb chaos monster. But Lilith is actually interesting, especially since I know her backstory now.
She is a powerful demon who is the daughter of Mephisto, the Lord of Hatred. She is also the mother of humanity, having created them with her lover, Inarius, a former archangel. Lilith was banished from the burning hells by her father for her rebellious nature. She then sought refuge in Sanctuary, a world that she and Inarius had created as a safe haven for Nephilim, the offspring of angels and demons. However, Lith's vision for Sanctuary differed from Inarius's, and they eventually parted ways. Lilith was eventually imprisoned in the void by Inarius, but she managed to escape and return to Sanctuary. She now seeks to conquer Sanctuary and rule it as her own. She is also determined to reunite with her children, the Nephilim, and use them to her own end.
And is it just me, or she is kinda attractive? No? And yes, even if the builds are not as varied as they might seem and people would want, I still like that we now have an illusion of choice at least. And actually, I did check out some build guides that float around on the internet, and I was pleasantly surprised that there are at least 2 or 3 builds for Sorcerer to level to get to the endgame, and there are more in the endgame, and there are different builds for each of the character that actually work. So at least there is some variety, and also, like I said, the ability to make mistakes building your character. And I think I did make a couple of mistakes, but that is also part of the fun. One thing I really like is the inclusion of dodge as an actual game mechanic. It was present in Diablo 3 and Immortal for some characters with some skills, but here it feels more planned and useful as it's accessible to every character. It adds a good dimension to the ARPG. You are not meant to just stand and trade damages with bosses. You now have to plan the fight, you have to avoid specific boss attacks, and that is pretty fun. You actually navigate throughout the fight arena. And I appreciate that. That makes the game interesting and fun, and that is a good evolution for Diablo. I wish they would have done more or found out more things that you could do in the fight, but still, at least that's something. But the game is not perfect. The game is beautiful, and I wish they would have experimented more with different view angles, as it seems that we lose so much of the world's beauty from this camera high above. But maybe they did, and maybe just like in Diablo 2, they found out that this gameplay just really does not work with any other type of a camera. One larger thing I don't like since already the first Diablo is the lack of character for our character. I get it, we are playing a classic fantasy hero that does not even need a motivation, as we are just a person who fights against evil, no questions asked. And it works with the simple plug and play the original Diablo concept was about. But yeah, on the backdrop of Lilith, our character who just does whatever everyone asks without any clear motivation or incentive feels pale and not very interesting. They definitely could have improved upon this. And the MMO part is not that great. The other players running around kinda ruins the lonely, desolate mood of the world. It really does take me out. I get some people enjoy co-oping dungeons and doing world bosses and stuff, but I wish we could opt out of the online part. Because, just like Dark Souls, Diablo works better when you are lonely and scared. And other large problem, the level scaling. It's a very weird decision to make the world scale with you in an RPG. Yes, Skyrim and Oblivion did it, but first of all, not sure if they would have done the same today. Secondly, those games work on the premise that you can truly go in any direction and find quests and adventures and shape your experience. Diablo is not that kind of a game. There is zero reason for me to try to run a level 1 from one part of the map to the other end of the map. In the story sense, it's a very linear game. So yeah, the level scaling is strange and unfun, as one of the core ideas for a power fantasy is to be over-leveled and visit other areas to destroy everyone. That is sort of a reward for going through with the side quests, for finding the best gear and loot. It is fun and satisfying, and world scaling takes that away. But I guess this is all besides the point, as this is not an actual review, but a fight to understand what makes Diablo beautiful. This has been my journey. I played every Diablo game, read the comic book, lived through the art books, watched dev interviews, read articles and Reddit posts. Has all of this changed my opinion of Diablo? Honestly, yes. And not only about Diablo, but also about ARPGs. While I still would not call myself a Diablo or ARPG gameplay fan, I definitely have a better appreciation for the genre. It's a wonderful power fantasy. In our daily lives, we so often are, if not powerless, then with a limited ability to influence our world, to do good. But games can provide that escapism, and Diablo, especially starting from Diablo 2, excels at that. It's not a game about attaining power or training to be worthy of saving the world. While mechanically that of course happens, we level up and get new spells and so on and so forth, practically we are a monster killing machine from the start. We are the hero. We are the chosen one. We don't ask questions, we don't doubt ourselves. While other games give us various moral and ethical choices, and in the end our character might turn out more evil than good, Diablo, despite being a dark, gothic world, always ends positively. Our good character, without wavering, defeats the enemies and saves the world. And it's nice. It works so well with the original Brevik's idea about simplifying cumbersome RPGs and just getting to the good part. And the dopamine catharsis of bashing a skeleton's head in and then doing it 1,000 times more for loot, for levels, for experience. It just works. It's such a simple concept on paper, but it's so gratifying. It works. And put that all together with the setting, with the mood, with the music. It's just wonderful. And in my journey, I also started to appreciate more what Diablo and Diablo 2 specifically did for the gaming scene. I can see now so many different ideas in the last 20 years of games that definitely have been inspired by Diablo. I'm baffled that it took me this long to look into one of the most important PC games of all time. But is that all there is? No, I honestly can admit that I have not explored fully the post-game stuff. I have not delved into the world of finding the best rune words, best enchantments, best gems, and going through the post-game dungeons and trying hardcore mode. As that, precisely that tinkering is one of the reasons why so many people do love these games. And I might do that someday. Because that is definitely one side of these games that I still need to explore. But yeah, so turns out that games a lot of people love and a lot of smart people appreciate are good if you wish to see the goodness. If you spend the time to know why they are good, to try to understand, to move past your biases, you find out, turns out this stuff is really, really good. And reading about them and trying to honestly understand why they are so beloved was such a fun exercise that I think I will definitely in the future videos do something more again with other games, other genres. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. I am planning on continuing to do this. I am planning on making many more videos. So if you liked something or disliked, you can write down in the comments what you liked, disliked, what is your favorite Diablo game, what is your favorite RPG, and like, share, subscribe, and do all of those things, and I will be back in a couple of weeks or something like that. Bye!